Welcome to the Finance Marketing Podcast, a show that empowers finance professionals to market their businesses in ways that feel good and actually achieve results. I'm your host, Hillary. I've been working with folks in financial services to develop marketing strategies that work and create results-oriented marketing content since 2020. And I've learned a lot about what works in finance marketing, what doesn't work, and where financial services pros get stuck. Join us each Friday as we explore real, effective ways to market your finance business and connect with folks who truly embody your ideal clients. My guest today is Jackson Larimer, a financial coach and founder of Lemonade Stand Financial. Jackson works with young couples and individuals to help them manage their money with confidence. Now, while Jackson has only been in business for about a year, he brings an extensive sales background to entrepreneurship, which, not surprisingly, has helped him grow his business more effectively. While working as a sales executive for various companies like Qualtrics and Opti9 Tech, Jackson realized that the sales department was constantly butting heads with the marketing department and vice versa. And it was this experience that made him realize how sales and marketing are really two different processes for a business to grow and get more clients. When sales and marketing aren't aligned, they can actually work against each other and result in a lot of wasted effort, not to mention frustration. But when they are aligned, marketing and sales result in more effective client acquisition and business growth. I'm really excited for you to hear Jackson's thoughts on sales and marketing and how he makes sure that both processes are aligned in his business growth efforts so that he's making the most of every relationship he builds along the way. So without further ado, let's jump in. Jackson, thank you so much for joining me this morning on the Finance Marketing Podcast. How are you?
Doing great, Hillary. Happy to be here and excited to chat together.
Yeah, me too. I would love to start if you could just give us kind of a high-level overview, let us get to know you of who you are, what you do in your business, maybe why you started your business, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. More than happy to. So, Jackson Larimer. And then as far as what I do, I'm a financial coach that works primarily one-on-one with clients. And my client base is mostly couples and some individuals and small business owners as well that are between the ages of 25 and 45. So I really target and serve that younger audience that's still kind of in the accumulation phase of, hey, we're building up our investments and we're growing our portfolio as we're in our early stages of life, preparing for those later stages of retirement. The name of my business is Lemonade Stand Financial. And right now it's just me. I did have an intern working for me for a while, but right now it's just me running the show. And I primarily market through LinkedIn is my main channel right now. I have a little bit of an unorthodox journey. I was probably the last person that you would picture being an entrepreneur in high school because I was very much kind of like the scientific mathematic textbook A+ type of student that was always, just focused on grades and performing in school and not necessarily exploring a bunch of creative avenues. So I went to Brigham Young University for college, and I got my degree in geology. And I was in my last semester of school, and I was applying for different jobs. And I'd worked in sales throughout college, so I was applying for sales jobs next to geology jobs. And I remember I got a job offer back from a geotechnical engineering firm, and I was so excited. I was like, "Yes, I'm in." And I saw the offer and it was for $16 an hour. And I was like, wait, are you like, is this a joke? Are you serious right now? I just went through this 4-year program and this is the best you can offer someone. So I was pretty shocked by that and realized that maybe that wasn't the best way to provide for a family and build wealth out of school. So I ended up going into sales, and I know we'll probably talk about sales and marketing later in our conversation, but I worked in tech sales for several years and just really noticed this big need among my friends that they didn't necessarily feel comfortable navigating their employee benefits. They weren't aware of lots of different tax advantaged accounts that they could use or how they could set up investments. So for me, it just very much started grassroots of helping some of my friends with some basic recommendations and suggestions for investments. And then last year, my son was born in June. And that was when I realized, hey, what I want most is that sustainable lifestyle where I can be home and I can be with my wife and son. And so that was really my taking off point where I decided I'm going to make this a business. I'm going to do it full time and be a financial coach.
Oh, Jackson, there's so many parts of your story that I can relate to. And I have some follow-up questions, but I was also you. I was that straight A student in high school. You didn't say this, but I'm maybe getting this from your personality. I was pretty introverted and shy and was like, give me a path and I can follow the path and I'll do it great. So I never saw myself as an entrepreneur either. And then I also came out of college. I graduated with my bachelor's, and then I went straight into my master's to get a teaching degree. And then when I was making teaching, I was like, really, this is it? This is crazy. So I had a very similar path as you. And then I also had a son 2 years ago in June. So I was going to ask you, when was your son born?
Oh, congratulations. Yeah, his birthday's June 1st. And
Oh,
he'll probably be 1 year old by the time this podcast is released. So
yeah. Well, happy birthday to him. My son turns 2 on June 14th. So love those little June boys.
very nice.
One thing I did want to ask you, what's behind the name Lemonade Stand Financial?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question. So I got the idea to start a financial coaching business long before I actually made the leap, but it was around the time that I was thinking about branching off and offering financial coaching when I found out my wife was pregnant. So then I got a little bit scared to leave my healthcare and my corporate job. But I was brainstorming different ideas and it really resonated with me. I loved the thought of, I want to help people be self-sufficient, right?
Mm.
So maybe different from a financial advisor where they manage your assets directly for you. As a financial coach, I'm very focused on helping teach people the principles so they can manage themselves and their own finances. And so that idea of a lemonade stand of, hey, taking the resources that you have and making something out of it was something that appealed to me.
I love that. That's a great story. I also, sorry that I keep interjecting with my stories, but I decided to quit my teaching job and go full time in my business, which I had started as kind of a side hustle. So I was seeing some success from it. And then I made the leap. And then 3 days later, I found out I was pregnant. So it was also the same, like, okay, well,
Oh,
let's,
gosh.
let's make this work. So I know how that feels. Um, Now, what I'd love to dive in with you, especially given your background in sales, so I'd love to hear you talk about the relationship and the interplay between marketing and sales efforts. I think a lot of times we think of them as being the same thing, but they're actually not the same thing a lot of the time. So I would love to hear you talk about how you differentiate marketing and sales efforts and where you see some overlap between the two.
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked because I love talking about this stuff. So, maybe a little bit more background on my sales experience. I worked in door to door sales for a pest control company for 3 years during college. And then I worked for a couple of different tech companies in sales. And one of the big ones I worked at was a company called Qualtrics that does customer experience software. And while I was there, sales and marketing were constantly just battling against each other. And me being on the sales team, it felt like marketing was the bottleneck. They were concerned about tracking things like open rates on our emails or, signups for webinars. And we just wanted to go out and bring in new customers. And we were having to jump through all these hoops for marketing. So it's constantly this point of frustration for me. And obviously, being in sales, I thought our approach was better, and the marketing people thought their approach was better. It wasn't until I started my own business that I realized how sales and marketing can work hand in hand to help you grow. And really, what I consider is marketing is your top of funnel efforts that you're trying to promote more awareness of your brand, promote more interest, and maybe even help your customers start to develop a little bit of preference. Like, hey, what Jackson shares really resonates with me compared to what another financial coach might share.
Mm.
Sales is more the harvesting efforts of, hey, we have some people that we've kind of primed the pump with our marketing. We know they're probably somewhat interested in what we do. Now let's go get our face in front of those people and figure out if we can help them solve their problems.
Mm. I love that. So it sounds like to me, um, marketing warms people up and then sales happens with the people who are warmed up. Is that another way to say kind of what you just said?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I know that you do a lot of your marketing on LinkedIn, so I want to dive into that. Before we dive into that, is there any other marketing that you do, or does it mostly take place on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two approaches here. Some people like to start really broad and maybe they're on every platform. I
Mm,
decided I was just going to start narrow and go very deep. And I think that kind of goes back to the principles that I've built my business around, of this idea of sustainability, that for me it's very much my lifestyle. I want to be able to be there for my wife and son, and I don't have the time or interest to manage 7 different social media accounts. So right now it's just LinkedIn. And then in addition to LinkedIn, I also write a weekly newsletter as well.
mm, mm,
And I've considered expanding into some blog articles and maybe getting into some SEO to drive some traffic through Google too. But something really important that could be helpful for other people that are financial coaches or financial advisors, when I was thinking about how I wanted to structure my marketing efforts, I thought about what skills do I enjoy most. And for me, I don't really love the video editing stuff, but
mhm.
I do love the writing. And so I thought of, okay, what avenues can I promote myself through writing? And there's actually quite a few. You could do Twitter, you could do LinkedIn, you could do email marketing, you could do blog articles or SEO. And LinkedIn was the one that felt like the best fit for me to start with.
So your weekly newsletter, is that something that you send through emails or is that something that you do on LinkedIn?
That's something that I send through email. It's
Mm.
not the automatic LinkedIn newsletter.
Okay. And how do you get people, if you start on LinkedIn, how do you get them into your email list? Do you just invite them to sign up for a newsletter?
Yeah, and I think this starts to get into the relationship between sales and marketing. So I have some lead magnets on my
Mm,
LinkedIn profile where people can download a free budget tracker. There's also just a lead magnet where they can join the newsletter directly. I'd say that's where I get the most people
mm,
going towards my newsletter. And then also, I realized as I was engaging in more sales types efforts of having conversations with people and offering my services, that if someone didn't want to hire me as a one on one coach, I still wanted something that I could offer them to maintain that relationship. And maybe a year or two from now, they're in a different situation where they're more open to the idea of working with me.
right.
So anytime I get a no in a sales interaction, maybe I invite them to a free consultation and they say no. Well, I have kind of a lower ticket offer that's easier to accept. And that's where I might just plug in, hey, totally fine if you don't want to work with me right now. But I do have a newsletter where I share some free advice that could help you.
Mm, I love that. It's so smart. Okay, so let's talk about LinkedIn because what I really am interested to hear about, especially because you started your business about a year ago, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's so hard in the beginning to like build your audience. It's not rewarding work in the beginning, right? It takes a lot of dedication. But I know that you have some strategies that you can share about what it's like to build your audience when you're just starting out.
Yeah, I think it's important to go into it with the right expectations. If you're
Mm,
expecting to have some overnight blow up success, it's probably not going to happen. And I think that's where people kind of fail pretty often is they don't see the results immediately, so they give up on it.
mm,
So my word of advice would probably be to give yourself some sort of benchmark to work towards. And for me, that was a 6 month benchmark and a 12-month benchmark.
mm.
Points that I determined ahead of time where I could evaluate my progress and see whether it's still worthwhile.
So, what were those specific benchmarks that you would set for yourself at 6 months and 12 months?
Um, I would say so maybe from more of a marketing perspective, I wasn't necessarily measuring how much revenue am I generating from clients immediately, because that's more of a long-term indicator. And
Mhm.
there's some short-term indicators that could be showing you that you're having success long before you get those customers. So from a marketing perspective, I was thinking, okay, what does my overall audience look like? How many impressions am I getting on my LinkedIn posts? And are those growing over time? Am I reaching new people? How much engagement do I get on my posts? How many people are joining my newsletter? How many free consultations am I booking? And so I could start with some of those indicators that showed me, hey, I am moving in the right direction. And eventually that's going to lead towards more revenue, more clients, and more sales.
Right. I really love the way that you laid that out because I think that one of the biggest mistakes people make, especially in the beginning, is okay, I want more clients, right? That's always the end goal. I want more clients. So I'm going to show up on LinkedIn. And then when you show up on LinkedIn and you don't immediately get more clients, that can be really disappointing. But like you said, it doesn't mean that it's not working. It just takes time, right? To first build the audience and kind of hone your messaging and make sure. I mean, that takes practice, right? You have to kind of throw some spaghetti at the wall for a little bit to see what resonates with the audience that you're building too. And then, yeah, just kind of keep warming them up. So, I
Let's
think
talk
that
about could I actually jump in here, and I want to share something about honing your messaging,
please,
because I do have some thoughts on that.
please.
So, when I first started sharing stuff on LinkedIn, I wrote more like technical type of financial advice or information, and it was just falling super flat. And I was frustrated because I was like, I'm giving people information that could save them hundreds or thousands of dollars if they listen to it, but nobody's reading it. So it's not making a difference for anyone.
Right.
And so then I had to kind of shift, and I realized I have to reach people and connect with them before I can provide them with financial value.
Right.
And I wrote a phrase for myself that I think kind of encompasses that I try and think of when I write LinkedIn posts. And that phrase is write from a place of who you are rather than what you know. And
Mhm.
as I've made that shift, I've been able to see a lot more success there.
Wow, that's so powerful. And it just reminds me of this phrase that we often throw around in marketing is, the goal of all your marketing efforts are to build know, like, and trust factors with your audience, right? So know, they have to know who you are. Like, they have to like you and connect with you, right? And then trust is the last one. And I really think it's important to focus on the know and the like, especially the further up the top of funnel you are, which for a lot of people, that's LinkedIn. And then, of course, you want to prove your competence and really show people exactly how you can help them. And that's how you build those trust factors. But that doesn't need to happen in the very beginning. That can happen in the emails or during a call that they get on with you. I just think that underestimating the power of building those know and like trust or those know and like factors first, that's a big mistake if you underestimate the power of that. So, yeah, anything else that you want to say about kind of honing your messaging and what you've learned? How long did it take for you to realize that?
I think I realized it pretty early because failure is a great teacher.
Right.
But I'm continuing to hone my messaging and going back to that know, like, and trust. Something that you can do within your LinkedIn posts. And if you follow a lot of big creators, you'll notice they're doing this all the time.
Mm,
So they have some posts that are designed to just generate more awareness and maybe reach new people. And that could be a post that's more on a topic that's familiar to everyone. So maybe it's a very popular brand or a popular icon in our culture. They're really just building on that familiarity to reach new people. And then going down to the like and the trust, they'll have other posts where they're providing actual value for people that have been following them for a while. Hey, here are some tactical tips or takeaways that you can implement to help you. And then the last one is kind of that trust one. And you'll notice they have some posts where they're actually asking for your business or asking you to take action. And that's really where they're gauging your trust, is when you see those posts that maybe share a client win story and then invite you to sign up for a free webinar.
Right. So when you post on LinkedIn, do you have a strategy behind that? Do you bucket your posts in any ways?
I do use a scheduling tool called Buffer that helps me to draft out my ideas ahead of time. I don't necessarily have a set calendar that I follow for posting, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I mean, that can certainly be one way. But I was more asking about, so you have different goals with different LinkedIn posts, right? Like you were just saying, some of them are asking directly for that business. Some of them are just creating a connection with the audience, right? Some of them are adding actual value. So I'd love to know how you think about, your different posts from that perspective. Do you create posts with those goals in mind? Or do you do something different?
Gotcha. Yes, I do create posts with those goals in mind. And I think a good rule of thumb is that you want to do a lot less selling and a lot more building
Mm,
connections and building value.
mm,
Otherwise, you can kind of exhaust your audience. And I've noticed this with one financial coach that I follow, won't mention their name, but at the end of every single post, they have an ask for,
mm,
someone to take an action, and their engagement is in the toilet. So they're probably not reaching a lot of new people because the audience just knows every post they read, there's going to be an ask at the
right,
end of it. So I
right.
try and think of that and make sure that I'm staggering things appropriately, that I have several posts where maybe I'm just sharing something interesting. Maybe it's humor. Maybe it's just a personal story about me so that people can kind of get to know me better. And then
Mhm.
every once in a while, I'll sprinkle in those posts where I'm inviting people to take an action.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I have often found that the posts that are personal, that I create, that are just stories about me and they're not related to tips, those often perform the best. People love to just like engage with you as a person, right? Have you seen that as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And when you have a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old, there's lots of content ideas out there that people love to engage with as well.
Yeah, speaking of that, my son threw my keys in the recycling bin the day before trash day the other day.
Oh
Haven't
no.
figured out how to turn it into a LinkedIn post, but I think it's a good example that there are always crazy things going on when you have a toddler.
Oh, I am going to be looking forward to that LinkedIn post when you come up with it. That's great. Okay, another question I'd love to ask you is, do you batch your post creation or do you write posts, just kind of as they come to you?
I write them more as they come. As far as my personal process goes, I have a place on my phone where anytime I think of an idea, I'll write it down. And then usually once a day, I sit down and usually I write my post the day of that it's
Mm,
published. I'll write it in the morning and publish it in the afternoon. I found that for me, that just feels a lot more sustainable of writing one at a time. I
mm.
know other people that'll write every single one of their posts on Sunday and just have them all scheduled out for the week. But for me, I feel like after writing one or two posts, my creative juices are kind of exhausted and need to be recharged.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Now switching gears here a little bit from LinkedIn, I'd love to ask you some questions about your newsletter, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you keep the content flowing and the ideas flowing for your newsletter? Because you're writing those on a weekly basis, right? Which that can also require a lot of creative energy. So what goes into your newsletters and how do you kind of keep that cadence up?
Yeah, one thing that I've started doing recently is I just write newsletters based on feedback that I receive from people. So everything that I do in my business, I'm trying to at least harvest some sort of value from it. So going back to those sales conversations where people might say no, a
Mhm.
lot of times I'm messaging someone over LinkedIn and they might not want to meet with me, but they like engaging with my content. And I'll just ask them for feedback of, hey, are there any topics that you would like to see in a
Mhm.
future post? And I do the same thing with my newsletter. So maybe it's someone that I've spoken with on a free consultation that's struggling with a certain difficulty. and then I'm able to write an article about it that could potentially help that person. Same thing in my one-on-one calls with my clients. If I notice certain trends of things they're struggling with or maybe knowledge gaps, then I can add that to my list of future newsletter ideas.
That's really smart. Do you include calls to action in your newsletters?
I do. Yep. And I have two versions of my newsletter. I have one that goes to potential clients, and then I have one that goes to current clients. And in the
Oh,
one that goes to potential clients, the call to action is to book a free consultation currently. And
mhm.
then the one that goes to current clients, the call to action is to forward the newsletter to one of their friends.
I love that. It sounds like you're doing everything right, Jackson. I mean, this is so great. And it's just so interesting to me to just kind of circle back to, your original jobs that you had in college when you were really butting heads, or out after college, maybe when you were really butting heads with marketing. But now it seems like you have such a deep understanding of marketing, a lot deeper than a lot of other, I think, solopreneurs who are like, okay, now I have to figure out the marketing piece. You just have a really great grasp of it.
Well, I can safely say that I've come to love marketing because it's just this really beautiful thing to me, and it helps me express my creative energy. And I feel like running my own business, I was able to make it everything that I wished it was when I was working in a corporate job.
Mm, I love that. Okay, well, my final question, Jackson, and you've already shared a lot of great nuggets of wisdom, but if you could kind of wrap it up into one nice little gift, what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone who maybe is setting out on LinkedIn for the very first time, and is just kind of playing around to see what happens?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to give just one piece of advice.
Give us all of it.
I think my top piece of advice would be write from a place of who you are rather
Mm,
than what you know, because that's just been something that's been very helpful for me. My
yeah.
other piece of advice would be that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I think a lot of times as new business owners, we try to, and that could be because we have a limited budget when we're starting our business. But if you're able to connect with someone that's doing what you want to do and you can learn some strategies from them, I found it's well worth the money to pay them. And it doesn't mean you'll do things exactly the same way as them, but it does mean that it'll help you to come up with new creative ideas that you can experiment with, gather
Right.
your own data, and then personalize it to your brand.
Right. This just reminded me of something that I used to do very often in my early days of LinkedIn, because I think in those early days too, it can be hard to come up with ideas and even know what to write about. And then the more you do it, for me, I found at least, the easier the content ideas kind of flow. And then all of a sudden it's like I could never write enough posts to, like, cover all the ideas I have. But one thing that I used to do, that really relates to what you said about not having to reinvent the wheel, is I made sure that I was always learning, and especially for me, reading books about my craft and about what I was helping people with, and then just sharing the insights and, the thoughts that I had about what I was reading was a really great way for me to share valuable information and get ideas for my LinkedIn posts without having to reinvent the wheel. So I really appreciate that piece of advice. No one has said that yet on this podcast. And so I always love asking that question because everyone surprises me with what they come back with.
Oh, good. Can I
Yeah,
say one thing that I think is a little bit of a contrarian opinion here?
please.
I know that a lot of times people say to reuse your content, and I do
Mm,
think there's a time and a place for that. But when
mhm.
you're first starting out is not the time or the place to reuse your content. Because here's the thing, when you're first starting out, you have a small audience and it's a perfect chance for you to make a ton of mistakes.
Mhm.
And so for me, I try and focus on experimenting with different ideas, and some of them totally fail and other ones take off. But then the ones that take off, when I am getting too busy in my business where I have too many clients that I can't focus a lot of creative energy towards my marketing, I've got this huge repertoire that I can pull from, and I'm not just reposting the exact same thing that I wrote before, but I'm
Mm,
taking what I wrote before and maybe I'm just using the same hook of the post that I know works, or maybe the same formatting of the post, but I'm mixing in new ideas and new content so that it's always something new.
That is also such a great nugget of wisdom. So I'm so glad that you shared that, Jackson. Well, where can people find you if they want to connect with you more?
Yeah, best place to find me is on LinkedIn. You can just search Jackson Larimer. It should come right up. I'm also working on putting out a website right now. It'll be lemonadestand.me when that's published. So here down the road, that would probably be a good place to find me as well.
Great. Excellent. Well, I will put all of that in the show notes. And Jackson, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your great insights with us. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Hillary. It's been great connecting with you today.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. If you're eager to market your business in a way that feels good and actually gets results, sign up for the Finance Marketing Podcast newsletter in the show notes so you never miss another episode. If you liked what you heard today, please be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening app and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you back here next Friday.